This video documentary was produced by HI Helazia Project with the support of NORAD in Benin, Ethiopia, Madagascar, Mozambique and Rwanda. It has accessibility features.
Education is a tool to self-liberation to begin with.
I think we are all different and we have to learn to live with these differences.
It's when you educated that you could, ask for your rights, know what to do and how to do it.
Before Helazia, schools were not accessible. There was no accessibility for students with disabilities. It is not specific to us, it is a common problem in other schools too.
Sometimes when they have a child with an impairment, other mothers, they leave them, run away. The children leave their parents. So we mothers always have to be strong. We must not abandon a child because of an impairment.
Developing inclusive education for students with disability. The Helazia Project was working in 5 sub-Saharan African countries: Rwanda, Benin, Mozambique, Madagascar, and Ethiopia, each with its own challenges and particularities to improve access to service intervention, in education or professional training. Children and students with disabilities are frequently neglected in policy making, limiting their access to education and placing them among the most at risk of dropping out. HI Helazia has contributed to the promotion of inclusive education in these 5 countries in the following key areas. 74 schools and training centers were supported to become more inclusive, with 1,883 learners with disabilities in those schools. 1,664 education personnel were trained on inclusive education practices, and 389 learners with disabilities received tailored assistance.
Education is one critical opportunity that persons with disabilities need to utilize towards, achieving the other rights and, for themselves and also for others. But in education in Africa, we do have several situations, and that situation go from the attitude of the community to nil service provision and inaccessible infrastructures and inaccessible school system and methodologies and curriculums. So it's a huge, huge task. So it's very, very much important for us.
I believe that the strategy developed for inclusive education was to identify structures with which we have provided several support services. And this support begins with the baseline, which consists in determining the level of inclusiveness of each organization. From this base, an action plan has been drawn up involving several series of capacity-building measures on inclusive teaching, on the inclusive nature of a test, for example, or of a school's internal rules, and also everything related to disability, inclusion, and the adaptation of tools. Today, these centers have become more inclusive. They can accommodate people with disabilities, they can adapt their tools, and they really feel inclusive. And people with disabilities also feel more empowered. Customers want to trust more, and today they are more involved. So, we have provided sufficient support to these structures because in the beginning, there were many stereotypes, many hesitations. Can a person with a disability do it? These are centers that were not at all confident. But with this support, they see that it is possible and they're already experimenting with it.
Helazia has made an assessment which shows gaps related to the policy and shared it to the stakeholders, including Ministry of Health, Rwanda Education Board, and also NESA. Those was affiliate of Ministry of Health. And through that, something was done as a response to the policy, the gap found in those policy, most reflecting in the area of the intervention in Nyamasheke and the Rutsiro district. Secondary is that jointly with the National Union of Disability Organization in Rwanda, NUDO, HI, through Eurasia project, advocate for the revision of educational policy of 2003, and that policy was outdated and was not responding to the needs of education in Rwanda. So a position paper was developed and submitted to the Ministry of Education and also with the affiliates, which is a good thing that the amendment process has started.
Inclusive education is a very complex process. This process seeks to integrate all children, participation of children with their needs, regardless of their needs, and seek to empower all children to the same level of learning without looking at the differences. Inclusive education seeks differences, but in the sense that all children have the right to education.
My name is Samsiatu, and I'm 24 years old.
My name is Aznake. I am 11 years old. My name is Jacqueline. I am 15 years old.
Bertha, I'm 13 years old.
Chamo-me Angelo.
My name is Angelo. I'm 11 years old.
My name is Denise Albertina. I am 26 years old.
My name is Ivan, and I am in grade 4. My name is Jean de Dieu. I'm 21 years old.
I am trained in weaving, and I love the way threads come together. My favorite subject is learning to study, read, and write.
My favorite subject is mathematics, which is taught in my mother tongue. So I like it even more, and I get good results.
I like Portuguese because we learned many things in Portuguese.
Social sciences. I like copying notes. My favorite subject is mathematics.
I chose sewing as a profession. The challenges I faced, I didn't learn everything I wanted, even though I studied. The problems I had before, I wondered how I was going to get out of this and how I will live. The most difficult part is throwing the thread, which requires a lot of movement.
Very few students speak sign language. And I would really like my mother to give birth to another child so that this child can help me in life, in my relationships and communication with others.
When my teacher calls me to go to the blackboard, it is not easy for me to stretch my legs and to go to write on the blackboard. And my classmates call me short.
Sometimes it was not difficult, but I have problems communicating because sometimes we don't have a sign language interpreter and our teachers didn't know about sign language. They used some local sign language that was difficult for me when I was in class.
After receiving a sewing machine from the Halasia project, I started getting a few jobs. I have a personal development plan. I am now capable of buying soap and lotion. I have progressed compared with my previous situation.
Depuis quelques mois,
Over the past few months, the center's director has adapted my machine to my disability, thanks to the support of humanity and inclusion. Since then, I have been feeling at ease working with my machine. My dream is to finish my training well, have my own center, and have lots of apprentices, both with and without disabilities.
I would like to become an engineer. If I become an engineer, I will acquire all the knowledge and skills I need to help students with disabilities like me. I am working hard to get through my studies. It's also my goal to become a computer scientist, but I am here now and I'm motivated because I have goals.
eu gostaria de ser
I would like to be a doctor
porque doutor
because doctors help
ajuda os pais.
patients.
Meu sonho
My dream is to be an entrepreneur. For me, I think I want to become a good man, with a positive mind and have a good kind of thinking that can support other people who have disabilities. In the past, we had great difficulties. As an example, we have children in wheelchairs that without the ramps, it was very difficult for them to have access to the rooms. So with the project, we have the ramps, and now this child can move on their own in school. We eliminated those barriers that existed in terms of accessibility so the child can go from one place to another without depending on other people. So it has been a plus. Another thing I can mention here is the question of adapting blackboards. Because in the past, without these capabilities, the blackboards were basically very small. But now with the project, we have made them bigger in order to offer better conditions and create conditions for a more inclusive teaching and learning process.
Inclusive education has made it possible to have solidarity within the center between learners without disabilities and learners with disabilities. This creates a bond of friendship, a good collaboration between these learners within the center and even in life. So there, we put a barrier to all kinds of discrimination and to nicknames. The advantage of inclusive education facilitates the education of students with disabilities, care, and support for students with disabilities, in order to include them in an inclusive class. In the Gateway Integrated class, we prepare students with disabilities so that they can integrate into the school system like their peers. In other words, the enjoyment of rights like all school-age children. The benefits of inclusive education are that it offers methods which makes it easier for students with disabilities to learn and to mobilize their environments.
The importance of inclusive education at our school is that all students with or without an impairment can access the school and the studies. The mindsets of students and the trainers has positively changed, and the trainer has the capacity of delivering their courses and adjusting their courses according to the special needs of the student.
The importance of inclusion here at school is important because these children with special educational needs have the same opportunities as other so-called normal children. We have many children who do not go to school because of their condition, but they have the same right as other children.
If we talk about inclusive education, we are allowing children to discover their potential because we all have potential. So inclusive education comes to enhance this, that the child has potential. With this process of inclusion, it is possible for them to develop or discover their potential. So it's a fundamental process. I would say it's indispensable for everyone's education. That's why the UNESCO Salamanca's idea and the others emphasize this idea that schools have to be inclusive, and they must create conditions and adaptations according to the reality of the children.
Regarding the challenges, we all know that people with an intellectual disability require more support. So it needs time and patience to work with them. It takes a lot of patience using gestures and tools in a concrete way to enable them to master them. So the challenge is to prove to the public that even as a person with an intellectual impairment or a visually impaired person can do the work they want, the job of their choice. The difficulties we encountered is the disregard of the community and their discriminating mentality towards students with disabilities, which hinders the enjoyment of their rights, which motivated us to implement inclusive education to support students with disabilities.
The challenges are many. One of the great challenges is the removal of barriers. There are several barriers at school level. This prevents the participation of the children. I speak more of the physical barriers. We have some children who use a wheelchair, but they don't have the accessibility. First, because the inclusion of children was still a process, that is to say, there were still many difficulties for teachers to include children, but with the coming of the project, it was possible to remedy these difficulties. If we understand today, the attitudes that children have towards people with disabilities is different, or children with special educational needs.
We have carried out adaptations on machines for people with disabilities. Each adaptation is specific to the person with the disability. Thanks to the Halasia project, we have received support to find out how to better support people with disabilities, whatever their occupation or subject.
It was very positive to work with the Halasia project. The Halasia project played a very relevant role. First, in teacher training, there were many teachers who did not have the subject of inclusive education. So with the Halasia project, many colleagues were trained and started implementing in the classroom.
Now, in our school, we have many students with disabilities, and the trainer are able to teach them and to train them according to their needs.
We have benefited from many contributions from the Halasia Famaha project, like accessibility to the blackboard, by removing the platform, providing a bookcase to store books, the supply of tables and chairs, and making the classroom physically accessible by installing an access ramp to facilitate access for students with disabilities, making toilets accessible so that all students can use them easily. Well, in terms of the integration of all the learners at the center, we have noticed great harmony at work and solidarity. There is also the mutual aid that has arisen between those with and without disabilities. We currently have 45 students with disabilities, compared with 35 previously. As a result of parents' consideration that the integrated bridging class is able to take care of their children with specialized support in class, thanks to the contributions from Halasia Famaha. As a result of these facts, the number of our students has increased and has also developed teachers' capacity for inclusive teaching, thanks to the sign language training provided by the Halasia Famaha project. I can say that these are positive changes. These are positive changes because we didn't have that practice of working with children with special educational needs. But humanity and inclusion appeared to solve some doubts that we had through seminars, supporting us directly. They supported teachers as well as children with special needs. My son has a disability. He doesn't walk. He can get up. He walks with support. He's just afraid to be let go. At first, because he was still a baby, I didn't have that many difficulties. But now, as he is growing up, it is difficult. For example, when I have to go out, I have to put him on my lap. And for example, when he goes to school, I have to carry him and leave him at school. When I see it's time, I'll pick him up and leave him here at home. Here at home, he only crawls. He cannot walk on his own. He needs support to walk. This is the challenge because not every time I manage to take him to school. The challenges I face with this child with a disability called Berta, it's a bit complicated. You have to be strong. It's not easy to live with a child with a disability because sometimes she suffers discrimination from people when she comes out. We advise her that she has to feel like a normal person.
My boy has an intellectual disability. He is my true love. He is a gift from God. He has problems with reading, analysis, and attention deficit. He prefers professional work to classroom teaching. He communicates well with his classmates. He loves everyone. And everyone loves him.
The advice I give to mothers who have children with disabilities, I always try to help because for me, it was not easy. It was a war I had with this child. Physiotherapy, surgery, I went through many things. Even at the hospital, I have always told my colleagues, we can't give up. We can't leave the kids because they have disabilities. We must be strong, accompany them, also talk to the parents. They always need our support.
My advice to parents like me is this. Accept the situation as it is and try to send your child to school, treat them and guide them towards school instead of getting angry with them. The Halasia project has been well received in the town of Paracau. This project has provided us with training in several areas, which have enabled the National Agency for the Promotion of Employment, ANPE, to improve its services in the employability of young people with disabilities. Today, the accessibility and employability of young people and the attendance of young people with disabilities at the ANPE has increased. This project is part of that process because many young people who did not know about the ANPE have ended up going there too, and the infrastructure put in place by Humanity and Inclusion through the Halasia project has made it easier for these young people to access the structure.
For the past 5 years, we have been doing various activities to improve the quality of the educational system in our region, Sidama region. According to the 10-year strategic plan we designed, we built a number of schools in the different parts of the region. Not only building schools, we paid special attention to those newly built schools being accessible for all students, particularly those with disabilities, to addressing the needs of children with special needs. Making the school building accessible is not enough. We also work with governmental and non-governmental aid organizations to build and equip resource centers, as well as community awareness, raising activities and capacity building training for teachers. And we are also working to ensure that no child is left behind in education. As part of achieving the strategic objectives, the ministry implements the general policy of the state in the field of national education literacy in order to ensure education for all. There are also partners who support us in the implementation of our objectives at the level of public schools. For example, parental relief through Zero Arriere when registering children's students in primary education. In other words, in basic education, so that parents can integrate their school-aged children into the school. We also carried out a media awareness campaign for all schools in the Diana region. The Ministry of Education is currently running an initial teacher training course with an inclusive approach on subjects such as special education universities in a little more depth, with a multidisciplinary Braille system and sign language. We believe that the teachers will leave with a minimum base to be able to respond to the diversity in the context of inclusion, given that the sensory field is where we face the greatest challenges. Through this initial training, we want every teacher to have a certain basis for meeting the needs of all students. Because at the moment, most teachers do not have sufficient knowledge to assist students with educational and special needs. And since we don't want to think alone about this matter, we created the Inclusion Network, one of whose challenges is what is primary school going to do to meet the needs of this type of students who will not have academic learning.
Our activities are part of the national program Education for All, which require that all children, without discrimination, be accepted in school and study together. What we have done as education technicians is to work in collaboration with our partners, such as the Elasia Project, to train teachers on how to educate all children, especially children with disabilities. We also had activities at infrastructure level. To adapt these infrastructures, we have removed stairs in schools. We worked a lot on toilets, for example, so that all children can access them. At Nyamasheke district level, we have a school center called Primary School in Ndezi, which is a model center for inclusive education. This is where we started with the support of humanity and inclusion. And we want the school to be a school where all teachers from other schools can be trained how we teach children with disabilities how to manage an inclusive class.
The implementation of inclusive education is starting from me. I had a negative mindset regarding the person with disabilities. So thanks for the training prepared by Erasmus Project. Now my mind has changed positively. I can now provide my courses in an inclusive way and how to coach the different students with different impairments. And then now I'm free when I'm teaching the student in the same classroom with or without an impairment.
Through the Helazia project, inclusive education training has been provided to all home teachers and administrative staff at the school on how to develop and implement an individual education plan. Besides, wheelchairs were provided to students with disabilities, and various books were also donated to the school. The different types of school equipment and the accessibility of the school environment, from the school entrance to the classrooms and even the playgrounds, were not accessible before Helazia.
Rwanda has done much to promote inclusive education, but for runners with albinism, they didn't. By now, we try to approach the Ministry of Education and the Rwanda Basic Education Board to show them the challenges facing by runners with albinism and requesting them to integrate them in this inclusive education.
If we did not have this project, I believe that we could hardly be where we are today, where we are able to respond to the needs of the child, we are able to contribute to the education of the child. We assume that we are all different, but we have the right to education, and we will respond to the challenges of the national education system. I want to thank the project for everything it has done for the school and for making this environment inclusive, for helping, for contributing to cognitive and physical development of the children. And it has had a positive impact both at school and community level. Not long ago, we received information that we were elected the best school in terms of level of educational achievement. But it is thanks to what this project is. If we didn't have a project like this, we would still be stuck with the concept that a person with disability is an invalid or a useless person or a person who has been punished, those concepts that were emerging in the past.